They find something in common with a political candidate at that level.
When you say they find commonality, what is that commonality?
They have felt persecuted by the system of American injustice. And it's not a stretch for them to think that Trump may be a victim as well.
Believe it or not, the trials against Donald Trump and the way these cases are playing out on television are actually not hurting him in the polls. In fact, it looks like these trials and the use of the criminal justice system as a political weapon against Donald Trump is actually helping him right now. I mean, I say believe it or not. I know you believe it because you watch this show. We've been talking about it quite a bit, and it makes sense because most normal Americans who don't watch MSNBC and CNN and all the broadcast networks all day long, most Americans look at it and know on the face of it, this isn't right. It's not fair. It's why we don't do this in this country. Well, over at MSNBC, they are shocked to learn what you've already known, and specifically the results of certain polls that show that Donald Trump is actually seen more favorably because of these trials. They spent a little time discussing it, and it's really entertaining.
We're learning more about how a verdict might impact voters in Georgia. Joining us now from Gwinnett County, Georgia, just northeast of Atlanta, NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander. Blaine, good morning. What did you hear?
Well, guys, good morning to you. You know, this is one of the most closely watched counties here in the key battleground state of Georgia. So it seemed like the perfect place to come out and talk to Republican voters and see all of the coverage, all of the things that we're talking about with this New York hush money trial. How was it impacting them down here? So I spoke with about 5 different Republicans, and they represent a very wide cross section, a very diverse group of Republican voters here in this county. And I asked them, how are they being impacted by this trial? Are they paying close attention? And what impact might a guilty verdict have on their decision to support the former president? Here's what they told me. Take a look.
Now, we're going to watch it in a minute, like I said, but I do want to point out something that is important for you to understand. They're going down to Georgia to talk to a man on the street sort of situation, to talk to them how the trial in Manhattan against Donald Trump for a failure to properly identify expenditures on his account sheets, how it is impacting them. Now, you know where I'm going with this, right? I mean, this is why the people hate the media. As my old mentor, Andrew Breitbart, used to say, famously, the American people don't hate the media because they're biased. The American people hate the media because they suck. Now, thankfully, because of social media and the low bar of entry for just regular schmoes like me to get into the media, we're changing that now. And you're seeing better content and you're going to it. But over there where they make a lot more money and they got a lot bigger budgets, they think it's newsworthy for their viewers at MSNBC to go down and ask the man on the street how a criminal trial against Donald Trump over an accounting irregularity for a legal payment is affecting their lives. And we can already answer that question. It isn't. Now, why aren't they asking them how the president's monetary policy is affecting their lives? How the president's spending against future debt is affecting their lives? How inflation is affecting their lives? How the additional criminal element allowed into this country through the southern border is affecting their lives? How that impacts the job market and how it's affecting their lives? How about the president's position on throwing Israel under the bus while they're in the middle of an existential war against terrorists who want to slaughter them and remove them from the map is affecting their lives? See, these are all relevant questions, I would think, especially when it comes to a presidential election. But no, you see, when you work at MSNBC, the only story that matters is the Stormy Daniels trial in Manhattan. So you and I, we already know how this story is going to end, what we're about to watch. And they're clueless. They literally sat around in their production office saying, you know what we should do? We should go down to Georgia and we should ask the man on the street how angry they are at Donald Trump over the Stormy Daniels thing. Oh, I know what we should do. We should find someone who's a Christian and we'll ask them a very simple, unbiased question. How can you as a Christian support a man who had sex with a porn star? That's a really good question, don't you think? Let's ask a Christian that. Oh, it'll be such an own. You go, let's do it. And well, this is how it ended up.
Do each of you support Donald Trump?
I do. Yes.
Yes for all 3 of you?
Yes.
Has this trial changed your opinion, even caused you to waver or question that at all?
No, it's actually caused me to support him more. I just don't believe there's a coincidence that we have a trial happening in Atlanta. We have one happening in New York. So the question people are beginning to ask themselves, like I did, is like, why now?
It's pretty much everybody says they're picking on him. You know, people are tired of going after him, and you see it in so many areas. It's really not a big issue in the party. Actually, they're really making everybody mad, and they look at a big bully, and the government is the bully.
This is going to be your first time casting a ballot. What is it for you that drives your support of the former president?
I think always fighting. I mean, he's taken so much just defense from news and everything, but he still hasn't given up. He keeps fighting to do what's right.
I've talked to many people who formerly identified as a Democrat. They have changed their political persuasion to independent, and they are looking forward to voting for Trump. Wow. Because now they find something in common with a political candidate at that level.
When you say they find commonality, what is that commonality?
They have felt persecuted by the system of American injustice. And it's not a stretch for them to think that Trump may be a victim as well.
You remember how a couple of weeks ago, may have been over a month ago, when Donald Trump said, I'm actually gaining support with Black voters in America because they identify with me because of all of the bogus criminal crap that they've been throwing at me. And that was racist. Remember? I know, it's shocking. It's shocking that Jake Tapper and Joy Reid suddenly decided that Donald Trump said something and therefore it's racist. But just hear us out for a minute. The idea that Black voters suddenly identify with Donald Trump because he appears to be victimized by the criminal justice system was racist, according to them. But you see, it may be anecdotal, but here you're hearing from a Black woman, a voter in Georgia, saying exactly that. You see, the American people are incredibly sympathetic. We're compassionate. We're empathetic. And even if we don't like somebody, when they're treated unfairly, not even just the American people, human beings who have any, unless they're sociopaths, even if it's somebody that you don't like or you don't agree with, if they're treated unfairly, if you know deep in your heart that they're being treated unfairly only because of who they are, of their name, of their race, their sex, their religion, or their political affiliation, you feel bad for them. In fact, you want to help them. You actually want to take their side. That's normal. Now, I mentioned that unless you're a sociopath, that's going to be the natural conclusion you can reach. Well, that leads us to the people who are attacking Donald Trump right now by using the criminal justice system. That would be Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, the powers that be in the Democratic Party, including Barack Obama, who I think is still actually giving directives for the party and for the country. And they have engineered this through the Justice Department under Merrick Garland and these prosecutors, these Soros-funded prosecutors like Alvin Bragg and Fani Willis, and of course Jack Smith, who is also, by the way, a sociopath. They're all sociopaths. They don't get it. They didn't think this would happen. They actually thought this was going to hurt Trump, that this was going to render him completely unelectable, because they are in fact sociopaths. But now the chickens are coming home to roost. Now, I used to think that maybe if he gets convicted, that might make a difference. There were polls that showed if he gets convicted, it will make a difference. But I told you at the beginning, if you remember, months ago, go back and watch it. We keep the archive out there. All the podcasts are available. They're all there wherever you're watching this right now. I said, don't believe these polls that say that if Trump gets convicted, that will then be the game changer and he will lose his support and he'll lose the election. They were all repeating it all over the place. But here's the thing about that whole, if Trump is prosecuted, then what? Question in a poll. It's a hypothetical. You can never, ever, ever trust a poll that is based on a hypothetical question. Ever. You never know how you're going to feel or what the reaction is going to be to a circumstance until it actually happens. And the way this is played out, if he gets convicted, that may help him at this point, honestly. They have boxed themselves into a corner with this trial in Manhattan in such a way that if he gets a not guilty verdict, the man is a freaking superhero. If he gets a hung jury, it's a miracle. And if he gets convicted, he is actually a sympathetic figure. You have actually made the richest man in the world, who was once president of the United States and has hugely negative approval ratings because he's a controversial figure, I think, to say the least. You have actually made him a sympathetic figure. You sociopaths are miracle workers, even if you didn't plan it. All right, so let's let MSNBC now wrap up this segment with their analysis of what the real people think down in Georgia.
People see that there's some kind of commonality between himself and maybe all the Black men that have been incarcerated and the families that have been impacted by Black male incarceration here.
So you heard a lot there. That was the sum total of about 3 hours worth of conversation distilled down into those sound bites you heard. But let me just tell you a little bit about those voters. One of the people that you heard from was the chairman of the county GOP, the Republican Party here. We talked to a longtime volunteer, somebody who's out knocking on doors, talking to voters every single day. And then also in that group is somebody who is going to cast their ballot for the very first time this fall as a current 17-year-old. And so really what I heard among all of them, though, is that the trial only furthers their support of the former president in many cases, and that a guilty verdict would not impact their support. Now, let me tell you guys a little bit about Gwinnett County. This is why we're here. This is one of our 7 deciders counties, one of the ones that are going to be so crucial to deciding the election this November. It's a metro Atlanta suburb, as we know, is just outside of the city of Atlanta. This is the most diverse county in the state of Georgia. And according to the county GOP chairman, this county actually has the state's largest Republican voting bloc. And so that's why there's so much focus from the National Republican Party. That's why there's so much focus from locals here as well. But it's also important to point out, guys, that after 2012, this county flipped blue. It went blue in 2016 and the 2020 presidential races. And so, of course, it's being watched closely by Republicans, but also a lot of the Democrats that I'm speaking to as well. They see that this is also the key to winning Georgia in November.
All right. Now, of course, that's not scientific. It's a man on the street. They're doing a sampling, but I think it is telling. It's telling that MSNBC did this, and it's telling that MSNBC even broadcast it in the first place, given the reaction that they had. Why are they doing this? They didn't have to air that. It makes Trump look good, right? Well, this is the same as the CNN segment we saw over the weekend, where Fareed Zakaria is actually saying this trial is helping Trump. It's wrong. And oh, by the way, the polls are disastrous for Joe Biden. MSNBC doing a similar segment here with men on the street voters saying, yeah, the trials make me more sympathetic to him. Biden's in trouble. I just want you to keep watching this stuff. Oh, and today's news about Biden accepting the debate idea, even though I don't think that's going to happen for various reasons that I've already gone into. What you're seeing here is the last desperation moves here for Joe Biden. Joe Biden accepted the idea of doing a debate today because it's almost over. This is a Hail Mary. This is a desperation move to try to change the subject from how bad he's doing. The drum is being beaten on a regular basis now, and the media is starting to play along. They're starting to pull the alarm cords, and they're saying, we can't win with Joe. And here's the thing about Democrats and the political left around the world, and certainly here in America. The left doesn't care about loyalty to individual human beings. The left doesn't care about Joe Biden as a person. They care about Joe Biden as a vehicle to get their end goal. He is a means to the ends. They will cast him aside the second he is no longer helpful to them. The organized political left cares about one thing: getting power. Second thing, keeping power. They have power right now. Donald Trump is an existential threat to them keeping power. And if it means casting Joe Biden aside, they will do it. So we're watching the final stages of that. If any of this works, sure, great. They'll stick with Joe. But it doesn't look that way. And you've got your Fareed Zakaria, you've got your MSNBC segment here, starting to signal and pave the way for Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. That's their play. Their play is Kamala Harris right now, until it's not, and then they'll find someone else. But again, this isn't about loyalty. It's not about candidates. It's not about people. It's not about personalities. It's about retaining power. And they'll do whatever they have to do.